Hello and welcome to the Book by Book, a podcast about the odd book or two you've read. I'm your host Scott and I'm not alone. Toby's here too. This episode we're talking about Lost Stars by Claudia Grey. It's a pretty spoiler heavy episode, so if that's okay with you, continue on and I'll see you on the other side. Blue skies ahead for you, UK
Indeed. I'm hesitant to say, but I feel like summer's arriving.
Oh, no, you don't want to jinx
has
it.
arrived, yeah. But it's the UK, so it can disappear at any given time. It's like, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go somewhere else and brighten someone else's day and around the world. But yeah, we're okay at the moment. It's lovely. Enjoying the sunshine.
Are you?
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad here. It's the same here. It's still kind of hay fever season for me.
No, yes.
It's always a bit gritty, but maybe on the other side of it, I don't know. Maybe.
Right.
But I am noticing I'm in flip flops full time now.
Oh wow!
Get rid of my feet prisons and let the feet breathe a bit. But I've actually got to put them away soon. Like I've got a big hike coming up, and I think flip flops isn't that good for your feet en masse. Like not the amount I wear them basically like all of summer.
Right.
I don't really do any sort of yoga stretches, and I do know like when I wake up in the morning, my feet are extra sort of like stiff. I guess just the way you have to clench your toes to sort of hold a flip flop, it just makes it a bit unnatural.
Yeah. So where's this hike?
It's going to be in Sweden, the the King's Road.
Oh wow! And you're not doing this alone, I understand.
No, with my partner. Yeah, so
yeah, that's going to be exciting. This is it? Am I right in saying this is her first one?
Like overnight sort of one. Yeah, like this is like a I don't know, like a 3-week one. So yeah, in this scale, yes, we've just done like day hikes and like weekend hikes before.
Right. Okay. So you've camped out together and. Wow, cool. Will you be eating from the wilderness? Like
no,
foraging?
I don't know.
Fungi
There's a lot of talk about how you can. There's a lot of good mushrooms and sorts of stuff, but that's just not my world. And I just think the paranoia will make everything unenjoyable, even with like a good guidebook.
Yeah,
I still don't think I'll have the skill to sort of comfortably pick a mushroom and not poison myself, or just be paranoid, or any little
massive trip.
Yeah, or just any little bit of indigestion will just keep me up all night going, oh, this is it. I'm going to sleep up and wake up.
I'm sorry.
But there's probably berries and stuff we can eat if it's like, you know, your classic UK style, like
blackberry bush.
Wild berries. Yeah, that sort of grow. But no, it's probably just going to be dried foods that you have to water.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there many sort of eateries along this route?
I'm pretty sure once a day we'll pass like a little thing, like a little
a spa.
Kind of. They have like natural springs and hot tubs out there.
Oh no, I mean like a Tesco's.
Oh, I see. No, but not quite Tesco, but I think there are little shops along the way where like I'm pretty sure every 15, 20 miles or so there's a little hut you can sort of sleep in for shelter. There's emergency huts, and most of them have a little supply stock up.
Yeah, like a vending machine. How do you think you're going to cope with because previously, my understanding is it's been a very solitary endeavour.
Yeah.
Whereas this will be your first, partner-based jaunt.
I think I'll be all right. I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I guess it feels natural.
Will you be taking, do you expect to be conversing largely throughout the duration of the journey, or will there be entire days where you feel like you won't be saying anything and you'll have your headphones in?
No, I don't think I'll ever do the headphone thing.
Right.
I do imagine most of the hiking will be fairly quiet.
Right.
Like with the actual walking. But I don't think there'll be days of like non-dialogue. Yeah, I think morning breaks and evenings, and even when we do hike, I'm sure they'll be chatting. I guess it's hard to sort of, you can't really necessarily walk next to each other all the time, and you have to watch your feet. Not a fair amount. I think this one is the reason I'm not so worried about it is because it's fairly mild for most of it.
Right. And when you say mild, do you mean like elevation wise or just
terrain?
It's
not like I think the last one I did, I kept coming up to sort of mountains that are like, imagine like a mountain that you would go skiing on.
Yeah.
That sort of steepness, and that does just take your breath away.
Wow.
And you have to sort of climb boulders and ladders and stuff. So it's just a certain
ladders
of concentrate, sort of like just to get over certain. Yeah, if there's just giant boulders you have to climb up. The ladder's better than the non-ladder, and just really steep, like pulling your whole weight up, climbing like a cliff isn't the right word, but just like, when you're a kid and you would climb something. I don't really know how to describe it.
I guess it's like an ant looking at
like if you find a shelf that's your height, and it's just like tree roots to sort of pull yourself up. You have to sort of climb up.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Wowzers. Okay.
But it should be fun. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I'll keep you updated.
Well, yeah, hopefully. In space, no one can hear you scream well. Canadian forest or Swedish forest, probably no one can hear you there either.
Yeah. I mean, it's touted as a very well, like, people go without maps.
Okay.
So well, like,
signpost.
Yeah. And we're going in a good time of year, like towards the end of summer.
Right.
Well, like we're going August to the beginning of September, which is sort of perfect, I think.
Yeah. Nice. Does this in any way segue to what we're here to talk about today?
Not at all. I had a good opening. So maybe I'll go on that, and then I'll clip this out and I'll stick it in an episode that doesn't have an opening.
Brilliant. Okay, so what are we talking? So I'm not privy to this, am I?
No,
anyway,
we thought we'd try something different. This is a Scott has read book. Toby hasn't read book.
Mm-hmm.
Toby, when you were a kid, you're into football. You love a bit of football.
Yes, I used to.
So when you were a kid, I'll never forget. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, Fergal. This is years ago, during like the early stages of the World Cup.
Yeah,
and he said, "Did you watch the game?" Shout out to Fergs. Did you watch the game? I was like, no. Like I might watch the semi-final and the final.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know how you don't like football. Like, what? It's just like, it's such a good equalizer. Like, what do you do if you get stuck in the lift with a boss? It's as simple as, you watched the game last night? Oh, that footballer. Oh, what was he doing?
Yeah.
And I sort of never forgot that. I'm like, I guess there's a whole, like, I went to see a few games of him in a pub.
Right.
And the difference between his team winning and losing, or a full night out with shots, going to a club until 3 a.m. on a weeknight.
Yeah.
Or going home to bed.
Yes.
That is the tribalism highs and lows, which I've never been privy to, ever.
I was again, roughly sort of late teens to mid-20s. I was in a long-term relationship, and entire weekends were written off due to the fact that my team would lose or win.
God,
and I would just...
It's like dealing with a toddler.
It would emotionally drain me, and especially World Cups and things like that. I remember when Beckham kicked out at Simone in one of the World Cups, and just devastated for like 3 weeks. Absolutely devastated. I came to a point in my life where I was just like, this is silly now. I can't...
The gods are just being cruel.
I can't support a team like Southampton and expect to do anything good.
I was going to say, because I'm on the chat group and it swings to football. Do you not support a team that are just consistently low, and that, like, isn't it not a point of, Toby, it's just the team you've picked are just low grade?
Yeah, it wasn't a case like as a thoroughbred football fan, you don't pick your team picks you. You are born in the area, and that is the team you support. That's what the diehards say.
Because you can go and see it as a kid.
Yeah, I was born in Southampton. I used to travel to the ground and see them as the area. Picking a team at whim is kind of cheating in the eyes of the hardcores. So it's a struggle being a Southampton fan, but that's why I don't chip in voice chats and text.
You can never make fun of anyone else.
No, you can't. It's really, really difficult. You're just there for the taking, basically.
But so, I guess my point to bring it into football, I won't keep going on about that, is that there's a sort of universal nod when you meet someone, like you're part of a globe, even if it's not your team, your tribe. I remember once, I think with the same actually we've been talking about, we're in a bar in London, and I sort of got the sense maybe you had a conversation about, like, you need to go out and make more friends, or she was just drunk, and she just sort of came up to you once with some random guy and was like, "Oh, this is Steve, he likes football too," and walked off. I don't know if you remember that. I just thought,
No.
huh? And it was like, who's this guy? And I don't know, like some
Yeah.
guy like
I've never heard before.
and it felt to me like, okay, I guess it's that thing of like, you need to make more friends, sort of thing,
Yeah.
and I'll help you. And like,
Yeah.
football,
Oh,
off you go play.
Brilliant.
So as a result, when you're in school, could you join a school? Like if you suddenly change schools, for example, would you be like, okay, there's just probably two big groups just playing football every break.
Yeah,
I'm gonna join in. Like, was your school football? It's lunchtime.
Break times, lunch times, and early morning break. Football was what we did. Yeah.
Yeah, douche.
Yeah.
Right, we're finally getting on to what I'm talking about because I never had that.
Right.
And I'm sort of introverted. Like if you know me, I don't shut the fuck up. I'm just really chatty for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't know me, it's like a completely different. Like at work, people think I'm that really. Well, I am that really sort of fairly quiet guy. I do start a conversation, but mostly not. I'll let someone come to me. So what I had instead was Star Wars.
Right. Yes.
And I was never. It was just something me and my friend sort of discovered. We'd seen it around that time, which was like the mid-90s. Like I'm pretty sure every Christmas day was just the movie highlights were either an Indiana Jones film or a Star Wars film at that time. And if you're listening and you're of a certain youth age, it's probably like it's hard to comprehend pre VOD Netflix world. And my parents were never into Sky. It was just the terrestrial. Like there was no paying anything extra. So it was a cool thing, even though it sounds like watching one of 6 films every year for your childhood sounds boring, but you didn't get to see it any other time. You didn't have a recording of it. It was just, which one is it? Oh, it's the one that starts in the snow. Which one is it? It's that foresty one. Like, you didn't even know which one was which until it really
was a Christmas staple, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, me and my friend just discovered we loved it around the mid-90s. And that's when we sort of branched into what is now known as the classics, which is like the novels of the world.
Oh, right, Star Wars novels.
Just let's expand this universe. And so this you got to remember, this was way before it was cool. This was almost something we kept secret because it was sort of further bullied. It was not, I don't even think it's a cool thing now, but it's like part of the status quo and accepted if someone likes it. And the Star Wars we're into is now, even then it was the mid-90s, but it wasn't retro. It was cool. It was just, even if you liked it, no one was into it apart from me and this kid. So in about 91, when the first, I think it was the Dark Empire novel came out, it's really easy now to read it and go, okay, that looks kind of naff. But that was the first new Star Wars we'd had since Return of the Jedi. That was a huge thing. Even if now, for me to look back and go, this was rubbish, it was like super high rated. It was something that finally, what happened next with Luke Skywalker and all these people?
Okay, so this was a direct sequel tie-in to the
at this time. It was canon.
Yeah,
it was sort of,
and there had been nothing else beforehand
by George Lucas.
Oh wow, okay, by George Lucas. That's quite incredible. And
it blew up. There's probably hundreds, and if you like, I don't know if there's a lore or canon, but for example, if Luke had a kid, further books in that timeline, Luke had a kid. Like people paid attention. I think they were commissioned by George Lucas. There's talks of like things you couldn't talk about. And I think a lot of Lucas was still not necessarily coming up with ideas, but I think he had to be pitched. And he would say, no, you can't use this character. Don't use these words. I think no one could use, I can't quite remember it now, but there was a big complication when the prequel ones were coming out. Like, don't use the word Sith because I haven't defined it yet, even though the word is sort of out there. So there were books that had to use like, he's a dark Jedi. Right. So then Disney took over, as we know. And so what's going to happen now? Because they want to cash in on it. So they basically said, we can't use any of this. And now we're going to do The Force Awakens and blah, blah, blah. We're sort of basically saying this these hundreds of books, which people have considered canon, we're going to put them under the banner of Star Wars Legends.
Right.
And they're not canon. Whoop, put those aside. That's like a split universe, which is kind of fair enough, because it's like we're going to do these movies. George Lucas always said he was never going to do another movie. So I guess people were happy to run with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here to talk about one of the new canon novels. Actually,
official
not one
canon.
of the classics. So I know we don't normally do it, but I wanted to dedicate this episode to my school friend Sam, who was just in this world with me. Nice. Like, I hated school. I was just relentlessly bullied, mostly verbally, but all day, every day. I'm sort of half Asian descent, and it did not go unnoticed in a like a 98% suburbs, Surrey, England middle school. So there was just a lot of relentless bullying. And my friend Sam was this little ray of light in this really crappy time for me. I wasn't even good at school. I couldn't throw myself into studying. I was like low grade on everything, bottom of the classes. And I don't know. I literally remember one day, like, Sam's mum was quite liberal. He could pull sickies that she would know he was faking it and just say, yeah, take the day.
Right.
And my mum was quite strict. Like, if I was sick in the morning, she said, okay, we'll go in. And if you're still sick, come out at midday, you know.
I know, that's familiar.
And so I literally remember once I went into school and Sam wasn't there, and that first bell rung to class. I just said, what the hell am I going to do all day? Like, this was just misery. And after the first class, and you have that 15-minute break, I just went to the nurses. I feel sick. Can I go home? Like, I was just absolutely, the thought of spending a day, you know, without this person, because there was no one. Like, what do I do? Like, I want to play football. Yeah. So just to shout out, like, when I saw in the cinemas as an adult, the Rise of the Skywalker, and if you're listening, you're probably a Star Wars fan. It's like, yeah, I get it. It's a trash film. It is pretty, like, what did Disney do? But I saw that on my own during the daytime, and I welled up. Literally, a couple of scenes got me so moved. I was welling up mostly from the nostalgia. I was thinking of my friend and this childhood, and you know, that's what Star Wars meant to me. Like, I didn't have football. I didn't have any universal thing that I could just join in a new crowd and just chat to, or okay, let's just play football. Like, it was just the most boring thing.
Almost
for me
a cheat
ever.
key, yeah.
So all I had was this one geeky thing with this one friend who was into it.
Is this the same guy that you used to do the drawings with?
Yeah. Pretty much. Okay, so Disney took over. They said, forget that. But this was before the first film had released. And so they started releasing what is like known as the new canon, where they wanted to tie together Return of the Jedi and what was going to be The Force Awakens.
So you're okay with the fact that Disney came along and said everything that you've all been reading for the last 20 years, disregard that, we're starting fresh? Yeah,
it happened at a point where I'm just like, I'm okay with all of these new Star Wars films being rubbish. Like, it's a shame, but I can even get some enjoyment out of The Rise of Skywalker. I've seen it a few times.
Okay.
That's because I can just, like, I can let go. Like, I don't care if it's not good or bad. I haven't even seen all the Star Wars on the TV show Star Wars. It's just like a very sweet part of my childhood. But that's like.
And have you read a large amount of the canon legendary books?
As a kid,
or ex-canon,
me and my friend Sam, I think, actually, considering how many there are, not really. We probably read about 5 or 6.
Okay. Not that many of them.
Like a trilogy called the Jedi Academy, where Luke goes to start the new world of academies. And I loosely remember that, but I actually picked one up and flicked through. I'm like, you know what? I don't remember a thing. And just some random standalones.
Right. Okay.
There was one which is like Tales from Jabba's Palace, and it was just short stories about random characters from Jabba the Hutt's palace. Even that little thing that sits on and goes, got like its own beginning, middle, and end short story.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's Star Wars, right? You go to you think about any character as far in the background as you can see in any shot, you'll find like 10 pages on that guy on the Wikipedia. when I was listening to a podcast from a writer I like, and she had done the Han Solo movie novelization. And she said the character who gives him his name, when he's like, "What is your name?" He's like, "Han." He's like, "What's your surname?" "I'm alone." He goes, "Han Solo." That's it. That's all this character does, like an admin guy for the Imperials. She was even told, "No, this guy has his own story. You don't have an open to give this guy like even musings of a paragraph." It was like, "No, if you want it, we'll send you the info we have on that guy." She can even like, and that was a new film that flopped, that is considered unsuccessful with fans and critics alike. So that's how deep Star Wars goes.
The opposite to you. Like, I had football, I didn't have Star Wars. I've never been a fan of Star Wars. I've never really gotten into Star Wars. I've watched the films. I enjoyed Force Awakens. I had no interest really in the other two. I thought they were quite boring. I've never read a single bit of fan fiction or a book or a comic or a graphic novel or listened to music. I don't have the DVDs, and I have a lot of DVDs.
It's just a cool movie you saw once that was okay.
Yeah, and yeah, even the ones that were on at Christmas time, I could take them or leave them. I wasn't like, oh, I must watch that.
Oh, really? You didn't have that kid excitement when it came on?
No.
Oh, wow!
I've never ever gotten into Star Wars. I was a Transformers through and through.
Oh, wow! So just the TV show and the sort of cartoon movie. I mean, I guess how I sat next to Toby, listeners, when the first Transformers movie came out. What's that quote? Like, if something, I can't remember now. Like, I would trade everything to be a kid on Christmas morning.
Yeah,
like that energy is just lost on it. That the closest I've ever had that was sitting next to Toby during Transformers, like squealing and sitting forward and clapping, and like you were more entertaining than that movie to watch. So it was a pleasure watching it with you.
I loved it.
I guess that's whether or not you think the film is good. Like, I think I saw The Force Awakens in the big screen with a friend. It was one of those sort of arty cinemas. So they served beer, and we sort of, my friend Will, shout out to Will, and basically got not pissed, but we had like 2 pints before.
Yeah.
And then we took a pint in and a whiskey. I don't know.
Wow.
And so we both had to pee like 3 times. And we weren't by an aisle. Oh, it turns out getting people to move during the first screening ever of Force Awakens, before people knew it was going to get bad, there's a lot of tutting. Oh God, there's tutting. I was considering peeing into my pint the 3rd time. But when that music came on the big screen, it just sent chills down my spine. It's such a superb opening. So, okay, we're going to have a Beep Beep Richie alarm for you, because it's Star Wars and we never talk about it, and there's a good chance I'm just going to sort of get sidetracked a lot.
No problem.
Beep Beep Richie me if it feels like I'm not focused, because we're what is normally the halfway point, and we're just starting the book review. When Disney took over and they knew they had these films coming out, they commissioned 3 or 4 books that were
Beep Beep Richie.
start bridging the gap.
Yeah.
And one of those is called Lost Stars by Claudia Grey. Her Star Wars books are super popular.
Okay.
This book I'm going to talk about, Lost Stars, is really highly rated.
So was she commissioned by Disney to write? Right. Okay.
Like they approach you, for what I know. There's in that podcast I was talking about, I think she talks about, for example, you just get a one-off payment for this. There's no royalties when you do something like this. You just get paid a flat fee to write this book.
Did she say how much?
No, I guess not. But there's no, even if you create a character, you don't own it. This is like a sort of done for hire job, which is sort of fair enough when you're working this weird franchise thing, right?
Yeah.
So this book roughly starts about 10 years before A New Hope and finishes a year after Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
And the reason is because our 2 characters are brand new. They're not canon characters in any way, and they're going to be dipping in and out of Star Wars movies.
Okay, so the main story then.
And that for me was the hook.
Okay.
More than anything else. So it's about a 2014 book, maybe 2015, I think, which is about a year before Force Awakens came out.
How many pages?
I don't know, maybe 300. But
okay, so it's not a tomb or anything.
No, but I've noticed like all the copies are quite oversized. Like mine was a hardback edition, but it's that thing where like there's not many lines per page. Like it's quite large font and sparsely written.
Yeah.
Like it does go quite quick. But, and this is probably a bad note for it, like it did take me like I did start reading it in January. And I finished it, like if we say now, maybe a few weeks ago, that's June. Because I just kept putting it down for a long period, which no real reason. I guess I would, that's the sort of problem when you're reading like 3 or 4 books at the same time. I was reading some other colossal books, like one of those passage books, 800-page vampire books, and a Stephen King 600-page book. So it was just like, I'll do a chapter of this, chapter of this, chapter of this. But then when one's ramping up, you're like, okay, I'll get this one out of the way.
Yeah.
So we basically have these 2 characters. I'm going to call her Sienna. I think that's how you pronounce it. And Thane. I hate the name Thane because it's so entwined between other Star Wars characters. There's a character called Thorn, and it just feels too aesthetically like other characters, like a bad person. Yeah. But it's not. It's not.
Thane and Sian.
And they're at the very beginning, they're really young kids on what's known as like a planet that's on the outreaches, which implies just like sort of the backwater, the sort of the south, I suppose, of the universe. And the Empire at this point are kind of the status quo, because it's like a year before A New Hope. And these kids are like, I guess it's something you have to wrap your head around, is that first half of the book, we know what Star Wars is. So we know Empire equals bad. But for these kids, it's just the equivalent of like, yo, I'm going to join the army. I want to fly TIE fighters. I want to fly one of those giant Star Destroyer warships we see floating around. Imagine how cool that would be. And so we
want to protect the world.
We're introduced to these kids really young, where they meet. And I think Sienna's quite scrappy. She's basically what's known as like a first generation for this planet. So they're colonists who are like farmers.
Right. Okay.
And then Thane is like the son of an aristocrat, which is like 2nd or 3rd gen, that basically came down to like lord over like the kind of the plantation owners, I suppose, living in big rich houses. And they sort of meet as kids. Like the Empire does like a recruitment drive, you know, like join the army, look at all the cool stuff you can have. And as kids, they sort of run up to it, and we bump it. We already start bumping into characters. Peter Cushing's character from A New Hope.
Right.
I'm embarrassed. I don't know his name. I'm talking about
young and impressionable, though, is how you would call them.
Blown away by the tech. And there's one of them gets into a fight. Sienna gets into a fight because she's like scrappy and poor, and Thane sticks up for her. And they sort of say as kids, like, let's help each other learn to fly. And then we sort of jump to young teens. That's just an introduction to who they are. And they're basically like, you know, quite young, plucky pilots on their own little planet. And they basically join the Imperial Academy. And so the book is going to follow like these 2 characters, and there's not for a while, but there starts to be budding romance between them. It sort of builds like the Romeo and Juliet in Star Wars land. With an interview with the author, or at least other articles that interviewed her, she actually said like that, you know, the Romeo and Juliet thing, that's more of a selling point. She actually took a lot more inspiration from Casablanca.
Right.
Once she said that, I can kind of see what she means, but I also feel like take that very loosely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So they're both working for the Empire. You don't have the Romeo and Juliet opposites side of the fence thing going on, do you?
Well,
and
so
there's a split, obviously, yeah.
Because we're in and out of the Star Wars movies, we get to the point where they blow up Alderaan, the events of the New Hope, and they basically pass with flying colors, both at the top of their class. There's quite a cool thing that they're really tight together, and they're battling 1st and 2nd place always, and they have to build a cannon and all the sort of electronics that go with it. And then when it comes to revealing Thanes in this big warehouse thing, you know, where everyone's cannon is like a big science project, like the wires have been cut and he's been sabotaged. And it's like, oh no. So like, it must be that guy. So he can either fail or be like, "Yo, I've been sabotaged." So he says, "Yo, I've been sabotaged. This isn't really fair." And when it kind of weirdly comes down to like either you did it yourself or Sienna did it. Like when we look at the footage, it had to be one of you. And so that kind of creates a divide because she's like, well, obviously it wasn't me. And he, I think, has hesitations where he thinks it's her.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever answer it solidly, but I think the biggest theory is that the teachers did it to cool those two off because they're so high above everyone else and they're working together a lot. There's a bit of like, you shouldn't really form this type of friendship in the Imperial thing. And it kind of works. They do not go their separate ways, but they cool off a bit.
Yeah, it fractures it.
And they graduate. And it's like, you're going on to secret project no one knows about on this place here. And you're off to like Darth Vader's Star Destroyer. Like, damn. So they're off to like big things. And the secret project is basically the Star Destroyer. Death Star. Jesus. Yeah. I love Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
And we start, like I said, we entwine, like we meet Princess Leia. Like at that point, she's like a diplomat, so they're quite blown away with her. This is before they know she's a rebel, and like she comes to a dance of theirs. We meet Pete Cushing's character. Oh, I can't remember his name. That's annoying.
Dooku?
No, that's Christopher Lee.
Okay.
Star Wars much. Sorry. Damn it. Anyway, so one of them is on the Death Star, and they blow up Alderaan. And this was quite a fun thing, was that half of them didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Like it was just report to like the viewing window. Boom, this planet disappears, which is like tech no one's seen before. And, a good chunk of them are from Alderaan. One of their friends is like, my parents are down there. They're all gobsmacked. And this is where Ascension Risers are within Thane. He's like, woo, are we the bad guys? Are we, I get it. We're blowing up the rebels, but isn't there like millions of people who weren't on that planet?
Yes, yeah.
And the Imperials they're so strict. You can't really voice that kind of opinion. It's like 1984. It's like, we're going to rewrite history. And that's right. It's not rewritten. It's just the other history has never existed. You're wrong. So this is where the sort of divide happens. Thane basically is like, F this, and does a runner. And at first he just becomes sort of independent, but it's still, you can't just leave the Imperials without like, okay, this is going to send you to jail for like desertion.
Grand Moff Wilhoff Tarkin.
Oh, Tarkin. Did you Google it?
Yes, I did.
Did that come to you? And so that's where the novel is basically, to cut it short, Thane joins the rebels while Sienna rises the ranks to like Star Destroyer Admiral.
Right, okay.
And they're sort of very loosely never really get over each other as a first love, only love. And they get to steal these moments away as we join the Battle of Hoth in the snowy bit, I think Sienna goes to hover around the end of Empire on Bespin.
Do you know the Battle of Hoth? Do they like meet in a corridor where he's trying to save some people and she's trying to kill some people, and they come across each other in the corridor and they're like, oh.
Kind of, where like they haven't had contact for a while. She did go searching for him. She did find him. They basically slept together. And she's like, I'm going to go back and report you as dead. And we can never talk again because you're a traitor. She's one with the Imperial. She is behind them. She has her doubts, but it's like,
So she's not all bad. She's just caught up in the propaganda and this is right.
That's basically her entire arc to the end is like, can you, like to the point of frustration, like, can you admit you joined the wrong team? Yeah. But it kind of is where her backstory comes in, that her people are very traditional. That basically at the end, it comes down to like, I was wrong and I admit it, but I can't not join forces. So I'm going down with the ship to die with the Imperials because I just was brought up traditionally, which is just like honor above all things. She literally has to go back and dissolve her relationship with her mother for the Imperials. Her mother at one point is accused of stealing. And she's like, I can't believe it. And her admiral's like, well, the Imperial's never wrong. She's like, okay. So I think she said, I just have to go. And what are you going to do if you go to that court and they find her guilty? She hesitates. She's like, well, I'll disown her. So that's sort of like, I guess, an example of,
wow,
in with them. And that's when she goes back and meets him again. Thane is there. He's like, well, I heard about your mum and I thought I'd come and stand tribute for her. She's like, you're crazy, you're going to get caught. And they have there's a nice touch where they just, let's just go flying and forget everything. And that's the moment where they're like, he's still there, she's still there. Back when you're saying about the Battle of Hoth, there's a nice moment where she suspects he's down there, but she never really knows. Then every time there's a fight, in the back of his head, it's like, is she in the TIE fighter? Did I just kill her?
Yeah.
At one point, she knows he's joined because of a maneuver he does in a ship. That's like,
right.
That's his signature maneuver. He did, I don't know, like a handbrake,
a
handbrake turn in a snowspeeder.
Yeah.
We meet up with Luke Skywalker.
Okay.
A bit of Han Solo. I don't think they're in it, but they talk about them because it's the Battle of Hoth. If you remember, Luke has a buddy in the back of his snowspeeder who's doing the shooting. He's friends with our character. Right. And he's like, oh, I'm buddied up with Luke Skywalker. That's cool. So it's a bit like, we know he's going to die.
Yeah.
And so it takes us all the way to the end of the space battle of Return of the Jedi, and a little bit further. We get tie-ins to like, it's very loose tie-ins because also it's like we're still 15 years. But for example, it ends with Sienna crashing her giant ship rather than letting it get taken over onto, is it Jakku? And I think that's the ship that Daisy Ridley's character Rey is scavenging from all throughout. And I believe in Star Wars Battlefront, this whole fight is a big level. Like the fight for Jakku during this battle style. You either are on it or in the background you see this huge ship crash into the earth.
Do you think that this constant threading throughout the existing stories is a gimmick, and the story could have existed without all of that? Or
yes and no.
Is it actually a nice fan service, or is it just something that is there to make people buy the book?
Well, we're mostly on the side of the Imperials. So the new thing we get is basically humanizing the Imperials. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. But this isn't something new to us. And we've grown up with a very black and white view of Star Wars. Empire equals bad, especially at this point, because we haven't understood that they're like, I think in Force Awakens, it's implied it's like children that are kidnapped. So when they're blowing up planets, and they're clearly a form of space Nazis. Yeah. When we're supposed to be on Sienna's side and she's still justifying it, it's like, okay, it's sort of too little, too late for us in our heads. It's like you guys are the fascists. We can understand that there are some people, but as a force, it's really hard for us to put ourselves in those shoes. Yeah, because like I've said, we've had since. When the first Star Wars came out in the 70s, we've literally had a black and white view of this since the 70s. Here's the issues I have with these novels. The stuff that ties into the movies is very fleeting. You suddenly find yourself there.
Right, okay.
It doesn't dig in.
Do you want more of that then?
Well, the problem is when we're not with them, it also feels quite fleeting that I'm waiting for it to tie in. Right. So for me personally, I was on both sides. I'm over the halfway point and I'm feeling like, when am I going to feel like we're in the novel when we've started? Because it has this time jumping. It feels like we're catching up to where the novel's going to take place in a montage. And that's kind of the whole novel. Yes. So I was sort of alienated.
That's what I was getting at. I think it does, the fact that you're time jumping, it's almost a story set against the backdrop of the films rather than. Well, I suppose that is the same thing, isn't it? It's kind of like there's somebody trying to write a novel about two characters that threads throughout the. I
definitely appreciate the effort. I mean, Rogue One, I suppose, did it. Tied it in to this existing thing, but I don't know. It's like once I'm at the halfway point, and it's like, okay. The novelty is worn off of diving into the canon scenes of the film. What am I left with? And it's basically a YA romance that I'm not that invested into. Yeah. Now, this is a very highly rated book, and I can understand why. I think a lot of it comes down to me just being post Star Wars. it was just a fun dive for me. So at its best, it was quite fun. Like I said, when we meet Darth Vader, I think Sienna is part of a small mission that goes to pick up Darth Vader, lost in space after A New Hope, and she just talks about God, and you just feel eerie around him, and you sort of know about the Force. So you're like, this guy knows what I'm thinking. Stop thinking, and she sort of gets promoted to his personal starship. So she's like, well, damn, I think Darth Vader knows who I am.
Yeah.
Remember that time Stephen King retweeted one of your tweets, and you're like, damn, it's like King, he knows who I am. It's in some form in the world. It's like just someone uber in the world has nodded to you. So there's some cool questions it has, but it never dives into it. It's like it raises a question such as, what happens when you believe in the message but not the team? I guess I can only really think in modern times where it's like politics, where it's like, I normally vote for this party, but their leader is a bit of a tit. But I don't want to change parties because I don't really agree with the other party. So it's like politics has had a change over the last 10 years, but slightly more where it's like you're voting for like the person.
The lesser of two evils.
Yeah. Like, do you abstain and just not vote, even though but it's still like, I want this side to win, even though I don't like who's going to be in charge. But in today's times, it's like, especially in England, who's in charge could change. We get, was it Liz Truss, who was out in like 2 weeks or something?
Yeah.
But I gotta feel like every question this book raises, it just fizzles to like, oh, interesting. And then not that it can give you an answer, but it just sort of doesn't dive in deep and dark enough. Which I guess you wouldn't want it to. Like, we're doing a YA Star Wars book, it should be more fun. And this sort of edges on the bleaker side, because most of it is from the point of view of people who are on the Empire, which I guess with Sienna, it sort of comes evident that it's like a cult for her. Like I said, she's like...
Yeah, a cult is exactly it. That's a perfect example of it being brainwashed into believing an ideal.
Like I was reading, it was a podcast I listened to called Cults, and it's like, why don't people leave when they realize? And it's because you don't see yourself as gaining the future. You see yourself as losing the past. If you've been in it for 5 years, you just think, the 5 years is nothing. It was all for nothing if I ditch out now. So maybe if I break through to the other side, it was worth something. It's hard when to cut your losses. I guess she's on that sort of point of it. The action didn't really feel, I was never really thrilled until we're on that final battle where she is like the last captain going down with her ship trying to sink this Star Destroyer onto a planet, and Thane runs through the door, and it's like, damn, this is quite a cool epic climax of Titanic proportions. And they start fighting. It's like, oh no, please. She's like, you're the enemy. He's like, look, forget that. Let's get in this goddamn escape pod and we'll sort it out later. And that's when her sort of, I guess, cult feelings come down to her. She's just resigned to dying and not being a traitor. And they have to fight it out physically, which is partly frustrating. You're like, I would really like them to sort of metaphorically, emotionally climax this rather than physically climax it. Because then what happens is like we're not really resolved if it's down to him physically trying to knock her out and get her into an escape pod.
And is this a fisticuffs or is this a lightsaber battle?
No, it's fisticuff. No lightsabers here. No Force stuff.
Right. Okay.
But frustratingly, something that's always bugged me about Star Wars is Han Solo's. He's sort of with Han Solo's view in A New Hope of it's all a bit of hocus pocus. It doesn't work for me personally because once the prequels came out. It's like in the New Hope, it kind of almost comes down to an Arthurian legend. Like it's like 100 years since people have understood, like generations have kind of come before it's been that important. But with the prequel films, in these characters' lifetimes, the Jedi's kind of were peacekeepers of the universe. And with communication and the technology the way it is, it's not like a newspaper. It's you're reading information live. So for the equivalent of the people who kept peace throughout the galaxy to have this magic power and lightsabers to be brought down and in your lifetime go, oh, I don't really believe in all that stuff. It's like, no, what? But there's evidence here. Look, here's some video evidence. Those people are still alive. It's not like my granddad told me stories of it, so I'm spurious. It's like, no, you've seen, you were there. That's something a bit spurious. I guess that's just continuity writing within the movies. You can't really undo. There is a hint. I think Thane says, like, I don't know if I believe in the Force, but something's pulling me and Sienna together.
Right.
Like when he basically before the last Death Star assault, he runs off to see Sienna, or to protect her mother, to protect Sienna's mother. And that's a big thing. It's like, sorry, we're trying to plan a big assault, and you ran off and you basically had a love affair with like one of their now high-ranking officers. Are you a spy? Because how do we trust that? They kind of brush it under, saying young love and eye rolling.
Yeah.
I guess
of love.
If you've seen the film The Mexican with Brad Pitt and Julia Roberts, or Cold Mountain with Nicole Kidman and Jude Law, I guess it made me think of that, because our two characters they don't spend that much time together.
Right.
I remember when both those films came out, a lot of the negative was like, we thought it was a love film, but they're literally at the beginning and the end together. And there's 2 hours of them being apart, finding their way to each other, which is fine. That's what it's about. But that's kind of where this novel has. They do get a childhood together. But
do you think? Because by the sounds of it, the way that you've described this, it is a hodgepodge of everything that's been done before, mashed together to the backdrop of a Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I wasn't blown away like this. Like I said,
there doesn't sound like there's an awful lot of originality to it.
No, I mean, you get exactly what it says on the cover. A Romeo and Juliet story in the backdrop of the Star Wars canon films. But I guess what you asked before, you're right. It's kind of held back by tying it into the movies. And I don't really know why. That shouldn't really be the case, because it just gives you a playground for these things. But I didn't want it to be longer. By the end, I was glad it was that short, because I did lose interest. But I got to remember, it's a YA book. Not everything can be, like I said, I'm reading the Passage novels that are 800 pages.
It's not Game of Thrones.
King Dark Tower books. But not everything can be, we're getting over, this deserves 5 books at 1,000 pages long. But I guess I didn't feel its epicness.
Yeah.
But maybe because we're dealing with 3 movies that were individually arguably epic.
It's almost like a light-hearted jaunt through an established IP.
Yeah, and like I said, some of the funnest stuff were, at least at the beginning, the tie-ins. Like I did go, look, ooh, it's that character. Ooh, like when you see Princess Leia. I guess I do like the little glimpses you get of characters we established outside of the movies. I always like a reframing. It sounds like an odd thing, but the gap between Fellowship of the Rings and the Two Towers was so big. I probably saw the Fellowship about 5 times before I saw that second one. And so that when Two Towers opens, it starts off with Gandalf fighting the Balrog. And just for like 3 shots, we get an alternative view of the cave scene. And I love that. I'm like, oh God, there's a new angle of the same sequence. Oh, I do love that. I love deleted scenes of old movies where I just get to see some more of that world, even if it doesn't add anything. So we did get those little glimpses of this, but it's just not enough to sustain a movie. It's like it should be icing on the top, not the full cake. So I don't know if this is a good, if it's very split, people saying, if you're new to Star Wars, I guess a lot of people are actually saying, like, this is a good place to start.
Right.
Because there's enough of its brand new stuff with stuff that you'll recognize from the clear movies. As I said, I think the biggest problem is just me coming into it now in my life as a 4-year-old. Overall, it was like a fun jaunt to go back to this. Like I said, more than anything, there was a nostalgia for school, and like I wanted to call my friend Sam and say, yo, have you read this? So I'm going to give it a high rating just for what it is, and it sort of represents.
I do like the idea of her being the captain of the same ship that Rey holds the MacGuffin up to find where Luke is later. Did they reference the Luke? This is how you find Luke
None of that. When I say it's a tie-in, it's pretty loose.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's just like just name dropping new planets. I think in an interview she said she had this thing where a Star Destroyer is crashed on. It was like another planet and another ship, but they were like, actually, we have something with the Battlefront game and with the Star Wars script. If you can just change it, you're very close to what we have. Like she didn't invent the planet Jakku. It just her big climax tied in with small shifts. So she said that was pretty exciting.
That must have been cool as a writer to be writing something that then the people that have hired you to write your novel have got, actually, you know what, we're doing this in this
you're going to get
bigger
you're going to get to see
thing.
this.
So you are bridging a gap wonderfully. Well done. We'll take that and use it here. That's pretty cool.
It's not the biggest gap. It's that thing where did anyone watch it and go, I want to know the history of that ship. It's nice that it exists.
Yes, I reckon there's probably 1,000 million people. Based on what you were saying at the beginning of this podcast, there is probably enough people out there that what?
There's fan fiction. I guess the biggest problem people seem to have was Sienna basically staying on the dark side for so long, and it kind of ends with her like arrested because she went down with the ship. And she survives. So like the year later, it's like she's literally in a jail cell, like appearing in court. Like she's just about to go to court for her crimes, which are, were you a part of the Death Star? I'm like, yeah. Like, okay, so you've got like genocide blood on your hands.
Yeah.
And I don't know, she actually was a war criminal. And she actually was a high-ranking officer, and that's where the jarring has come. So far, I don't think there's been a sequel, but it's always been
I was going to say, it's going to be a sequel.
She has done more Star Wars stuff, I believe. She's quite a modern canon heavyweight. She's done 3 or 4, but I don't think this one has a sequel.
Right.
But people
you see where it could go?
Yeah, it's hinted nicely because it ends with her and Thane in a jail cell, and he's winking, going, I think it's going to be all right. Like, I pulled some strings, which is also really offensive to other people. If it's like, hello, I'm an old granny and she killed my planet. I don't care if you like her. I don't care if she came through at the end. It's like the Darth Vader or the Ren complexity of just because he turned good for 5 minutes, it doesn't wipe out 50 years of desolating the goddamn universe.
Yeah.
But it sort of cuts back to the Imperials, like we're gonna reform. And one of her friends who thinks she died on that ship is like, we're going to give her the highest death honor you can have. And we're going to avenge her. So it definitely sort of peeps into potential sequel.
Okay.
I guess I like the idea of them finding out they've given you the highest honor of doing everything you can for the Imperials. It's very hard for us not to condemn you to life in jail right now. Maybe that's why there's been no sequel, because it's just, I sort of did it too tight. I sort of took her too far. That to get her out is unbelievable. They could bring her out and make her a spy. I don't know. It seems like far too much time has passed for there to be a sequel now of interest.
Right. Yeah, I suppose. Because people that would have loved it back then are probably
disillusioned, shall we say, with Disney's Star Wars.
Reading Stephen King.
If you've read this and you're a fan of this, kudos to you. I could definitely
know what you thought in the comments.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably don't know if I read any more Star Wars books. As fun as I had this, I read one last year, the Dark Empire, which was the first of the old canon ones, thinking it was going to be, I thought I'd read it as a kid, so it was going to be in a trip down memory. I don't think I did. I remembered nothing from it. I wasn't a reviewer at the time, but then too much time passed, and I don't know. Maybe I think someone's done their very own animated film of it on YouTube. Maybe I'll watch it as a refresher. Maybe, audience, do you care for us to review the Dark, whatever it was called? Heir to the Empire. So when I said like those old canon were wiped out, a lot of those characters are poking through the new canon. Like they've just sort of, I guess, recycled is the term. Yeah. Like if you've ever seen a blue guy in a sort of ship's uniform, he was that star of that book. I believe there was talk of him in Mandalorian. Right. So when I say they started their new canon, not everything was lost. Some ideas have started to come through.
But just the stories and the general direction
what happened
that was
to
taking.
Our fun characters.
Yeah. Luke having a child, and
people have said the best thing they should do is just make them into like some cartoon movies for Disney, like the Batman. I think the Batman animated start doing just like here's this Batman story. Forget about the past and the future. Just enjoy this with these characters, and you get the idea. That's all I have to say about Lost Stars. I'm going to give it a thumb. I don't know. Is it a bit like weak of me to say I did particularly enjoy it, but I'm giving it a thumbs up?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't. No? I wouldn't read the sequel. But
so you'd say it's a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I guess it was smacking
7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5. But a million high-rated reviews on Amazon and Goodreads will tell me to zip it.
Yeah. What's your opinion count for anyway? Interesting. I can't say that I'm in any hurry to read it. After
have you ever read, like, you're a huge Firefly fan?
Firefly, yeah. Fan. No, I've never read any. Don't think I've read any fan fiction or
any world
tie-in novels. None of that. Never. Not of any franchise. I never read Transformers book. I've read the only thing that I've
Assassin's Creed novelization.
No, nothing.
Just
Never.
Not your world.
No, the only book thing that I've done that is I read the Ring book. The original film was based on.
Okay, I guess that doesn't really count. Like if the film was based on the book. You do have a novelization of My Neighbor Toretto.
Yes, I do.
I'm looking forward to that. Have some nice theatre play anecdotes.
That's a good shout.
Coming up sometime next year, listeners.
Talking of coming up, our next podcast is going to be, I think, an exciting one.
Ooh, Legends and Lattes.
Legends and Lattes, yes, which we are both. I'm on the cusp of finishing, so it should be with you very shortly. But spoiler warning, I quite enjoyed this book.
I feel like it's right up the alley of this podcast. If you like coffee, and you like sort of fun, sweet, you know what? We'll save that. We're giving away our cliffhanger ending. Do you have the short? I've finished the novel, but I found that there's a short story
at the end. I haven't read that yet. Yeah, I've got like 2 chapters left to finish.
Nice. If not next week, the week after.
There's a good section of questions at the end as well. Don't know if you've got that.
I don't know if I do. I'll let you spring that on me. Assume they won't be too heavy.
You've got the recipes for thin blitz. And then, it's an interview with Travis Bardley.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I have that, so I'll let you pick out the interesting things from that. Get on board, listener. It's quite a quick read, and by the time, who knows when these episodes are going out. But yeah, Legends and Lattes coming soon. Shoot us an email or put in the comments what you thought of Lost Stars. And
like and subscribe.
Just send us a hug.
Yeah.
We are not really so high with the fan interaction, so let us know you're out there. Like and subscribe, and all the things you do with normal podcasts. Hey, we're going to wrap it up around there. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. Join us again next episode, and until then, it's where you look at bookstores, and have a good day.